The courtroom dropped into an unnatural hush, the kind that seemed heavy, weighing down each chest, taking away each breath. The soft groan of the massive wooden doors, piercing through the silence, seemed like the beginning of something great. All eyes turned. All heads locked onto the figure, entering the room. It was Meri Brown. Her arrival wasn't boisterous, but it had a heaviness that filled the air. She moved slowly, purposefully, every step rebounding off the chilled marble floor like the drum beat to war. Her chin was lifted high, but one could see the real thing if one observed closely. Her hands shook ever so minutely, revealing the tempest brewing within her. For years, Sister Wives viewers had watched her smile through heartache, watched her stand in the background, engulfed in darkness as others basked in the spotlight. They had watched the unshed tears, the quiet bearing of betrayal, the loneliness that invaded like a phantom each night. They knew her sorrow, but here in this court of law, her sorrow was no longer concealed. Today was different. Today, she wasn't merely Kody's first wife. She wasn't merely the woman left behind, the one whose tale was upstaged by others. Today, she was something much stronger. A warrior entering the battlefield of justice. Her heels clicked on the floor, a harsh ripple against the whispers that flowed through the gallery. It was steady, determined, like the relentless beat of a war drum. And across the room, sitting and looking at her with arms crossed and an assumed air of confidence, was Kody Brown. But the confidence didn't quite extend to his eyes. Kody, who had dictated the narrative for so long, who smiled into the cameras and spun his own version of what was true, was now merely a man sitting on the defendant's side of the courtroom. His bravado seemed to recede with each step Meri took. For the first time, he was not the hero of the story. This wasn't reality television anymore. This was real life. And Meri was prepared to lay bare the truth. As she walked to her seat, her heart thudded like a crazed drum in her chest. She felt the burden of each moment that had led her to this place, each isolated night, each shattered vow, each time she doubted herself because of the man who now occupied the opposite side of the table. She looked at him briefly, long enough to catch his eyes. His arms were crossed, but she noticed the flash, just a flash of discomfort. He attempted to cover it with a sneer, but she knew him too well. She once loved him, once trusted him with every shard of her soul. That past lent her a certain authority, because she could glimpse behind his disguise. And she knew, deep in her heart, Kody was frightened. The room itself seemed to vibrate with tension. Wooden benches decorated with onlookers groaned under the pressure of bodies leaning forward, unwilling to miss a detail. Court reporters messed with their machines. Lawyers bumped papers, the bailiff stood at attention, but they all had one thing in common. Their eyes were fixed on Meri. Her lawyer rose to greet her with a reassuring nod. "You're ready," he whispered. And she was. Not because the fear was eliminated. No, the fear was present, slinking inside of her like a shadow. But because for the first time, the fear did not govern her. She had borne fear for far too long. Fear of being unwanted. Fear of being forsaken. Fear of never measuring up. Today she entered this room, bearing all of that. But she also bore something more. Courage. The judge walked in, gavel hitting wood with a sound that caused even the walls to shake. Court is now in session. Meri took one deep breath before closing her eyes. The sound of the gavel not just the beginning of the hearing to her. It was the beginning of freedom. The beginning of truth. The beginning of being finally seen. For so long, she had existed in the shadows of a man's dominance. She had been smiling for photographs, acting as if everything was okay, yet breaking apart piece by piece inside. She had been informed directly and indirectly that her voice did not count, that her hurt was not enough to alter anything. But here, in this courtroom, among strangers who were about to receive the full force of her tale, Meri found something strong. Her voice was more important than it had ever been. She stiffened in her seat, folding her shaking hands in front of her, steadying them. Her attorney started to talk, establishing the groundwork for the case, but she hardly listened. Her eyes never left Kody. He shunned her eyes at first, keeping himself occupied with hushed conversations with his attorney, but soon their eyes locked again, and in that instance, Meri witnessed it. Fear not of losing money or possessions, but fear of losing control. Because Kody knew, he knew what was to come. And Meri was not afraid to speak it anymore. Whispers in the gallery swelled as reporters jotted notes. Everybody wanted to know the same. What would Meri reveal? What had been concealed behind the glossy facade of sister wives? The cameras weren't rolling here. No producers to cut her agony into a subplot. No storyline to cushion the impact of what had actually happened. In this courtroom, there was only reality. And for the first time, Meri had the power to give it. She ate about the years she'd wasted doubting herself, the isolation that corroded her soul like acid on steel. She ate about the late nights she'd cried into her pillow, hoping that somehow, some way things would get better, that somehow Kody would love her once more. Those nights belonged to the past. What was left was the strength tempered in that blaze, the toughness gained from standing alone, the courage from heartbreak. And today, that courage was her most potent weapon. She made a silent vow to herself as the proceedings commenced. Whatever happens, I will never be quiet again. The bailiff's voice echoed as the charges were read, outlining the case that had brought them all here. Words like betrayal, manipulation, financial deceit filled the air, sharp and heavy. Each one landed like a stone in the silence. Meri's heart thudded, but she did not look away. Her eyes stayed fixed on the man who had once been her entire world. She wasn't here begging anymore. She wasn't here pleading for scraps of love. She was here to fight. And although the outcome was still in question, one thing was certain: the moment Meri Brown entered that courtroom, the story was forever changed. The trial began and dragged slowly, almost agonizingly slowly. Legal jargon swirled in the air. Motions, objections, rulings. But below that chilly formal veneer, a storm was brewing, waiting to break. And then it did. Meri's lawyer, a tall man with calm eyes and a voice that carried weight without shouting, rose to his feet. He held a thick stack of papers bound together, the edges sharp and intimidating. He stepped forward, every movement deliberate, like a man who knew the power of the truth he carried. "Your Honor," he began, his tone measured yet piercing. "This case may have been filed as a property dispute. But as you'll soon see, this is far more than just about land. This is about deception, betrayal, and years of manipulation hidden behind the mask of family." The gallery shifted, people leaned forward. Even the judge tilted her head slightly, intrigued. The attorney spun, waving the papers before the courtroom. "These documents," he went on, "indicate how Mr. Kody Brown moved assets. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. All in manners that left my client, Meri Brown, with next to nothing. He made her promises, partnership, family, shared dream. What she got instead was exclusion, silence, and fiscal erasure." A murmur fell across the room. Meri's hands clenched together, her knuckles white, as her lawyer laid the documents gently onto the evidence table. Each page felt like a stone lifted from her heart and dropped into the open for the world to finally see. For so long, she had kept her pain hidden, whispered in the ears of friends, buried within journals, concealed beneath elegantly constructed smiles for camera. But here within this room, the proof spoke for her. The documents chronicled the tale she bore herself for years. She looked sideways at Kody. His jaw was clenched, his arms crossed even tighter. But panic flickered for a moment in his lawyer's eyes as he grabbed the papers quickly and riffled through them with agitated fingers. Meri's attorney approached closer to the bench. "Your Honor, this is not merely about money. It is about trust. A woman who gave all her loyalty, her love, her years, to a man who deliberately excluded her from her own life. Presenting himself to the world as a devoted husband, he transferred funds, altered names on deeds, and made sure the woman standing before you had nothing." The words hit like a sledgehammer. Gasps reverberated throughout the gallery, pens scribbled furiously over paper by reporters. A handful of spectators shook their heads in amazement. Meri dropped her eyes, her throat constricting. It wasn't the money that brought tears to her eyes. It was the betrayal. Each sale on those pages was more than a figure. It was another block in the wall that Kody had constructed between them. Another reminder that the vows he had once spoken, the promises he had once made, meant nothing to him. Her thoughts reverted to the early times. She recalled all the late nights, strategizing about their future together, how they had discussed creating a family that would endure forever. She recalled the laughter, the dreams, the times she felt as if she was his partner in all. But now those memories contorted like knives. The same man who used to hold her hand, while discussing forever, was the same man who had stolen that forever from her piece by piece, document by document. The betrayal wasn't just in what he did, it was in what he decided to destroy. Kody's attorney finally rose, protesting. "Your Honor, these allegations are overblown. My client was within his rights, as the law provides. All property transactions were made in good faith and openly transparent." Meri's lawyer cut in sharply. His voice was calm, but his words sliced through the air. Then why were these transactions hidden under different accounts? Why were the deeds signed during moments when my client was deliberately excluded? Why was Meri Brown, the first wife, promised security and then left with scraps? The judge held up a hand, quieting the room. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing at Kody. "Mr. Brown, these are serious charges. If substantiated, they can mean intentional fraud." Kody fidgeted in his seat, his bravado waning like a flame on a windy day. For so long, he had dictated the story, wooing lenses, spinning his reality, but not here. The proof was before him, black marks on white paper, unspinnable and undeniable. Meri swallowed hard, her chest hurting. She needed to scream, to cry out, to yell why. But she remained quiet, her voice caged for the perfect time. Because this wasn't about screaming the truth, it was about establishing it, and that truth was slowly untangling before everyone. The lawyer laid out more evidence. Bank statements showing unexplained withdrawals, land deeds that mysteriously shifted names, joint accounts that had suddenly become personal. Each piece was another dagger of betrayal revealed. With every page displayed, Meri's strength grew. The courtroom wasn't just seeing papers, they were seeing her story. The hidden wounds of her marriage were now visible scars, undeniable and raw. She paused, looking at the jury. Think about giving your life to someone. Think about planning a future with someone, and believing that your love is secure, only to learn that the person you loved the most was quietly removing you from that future. That's not partnership. That's betrayal. A murmur filled the courtroom. Even strangers, individuals who had never known Meri in their lives, felt the gravity of her suffering. And in that instant, Meri understood something. This wasn't about her alone. This was for every individual who had ever been silenced, denied, or shoved aside for love. Kody finally broke his silence, his voice sharp. "This is ridiculous. I provided for her. She had everything she needed. She wasn't excluded. She chose to step away." The words made Meri's head snap up. Anger, hot and fierce, burned in her chest. She wanted to shout back, to demand how he could twist the truth, even now. But she stayed silent, her lawyer placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "Patience," he whispered. The courtroom had heard enough already. Kody's words only showed them what they needed to see. A man eager to defend himself. A man who still thought he could spin the tale. But the papers said otherwise. And for the first time in years, Meri felt the balance tipping. The truth, long hidden, was now being revealed. She took a deep breath, her tears evaporating, replaced by something else. Not rage, not revenge, determination. Because this wasn't about tearing down Kody, it was about liberating herself. And as the proof mounted higher, as Kody's facade fractured further, Meri knew one thing absolutely. The world was finally seeing him as he truly was. And they were seeing her, not as the forgotten wife, not as the quiet one, but as a woman, courageous enough to confront betrayal and turn it into strength. The clerk's voice echoed. "Please put your right hand up. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Meri raised her shaking hand. "I do." She made her way to the witness stand slowly, as if her legs might fail her beneath her. Each step was more weighed down than the last. She wasn't approaching a wooden chair, she was approaching her past, approaching each heartbreak, every solitary night, every whispered prayer that had been left unanswered. The room was still, holding its breath. Reporters poised their pens, jurors leaned forward, and even the judge's normally impassive stare softened ever so slightly. Everyone seemed to know that this was the moment they had all been waiting for. Meri sat, folded her hands together, and looked down briefly. Her lawyer nodded to her slightly. It was her turn to speak, and when she eventually looked up, her voice, though trembling initially, cut through the courtroom like a melody of agony and perseverance. I was his first wife, she started quietly, her gaze darting to Kody then onto the judge. I believed in us. I believed in the dream we constructed together. When we were married, I thought forever. I gave him my youth, my heart, my loyalty. I gave him all that I had, and for years I thought that was sufficient. Her voice broke, but she composed herself. But slowly, I became invisible. The words resided in the air, heavy and pointed. A wave of feeling circulated through the gallery. Some shifted uncomfortably, others bowed their heads, but no one averted their gaze. I observed as he took his focus away from others. I observed as my position, the position I struggled to maintain, slipped away from me. And when I pleaded for leftovers of love, just a smile, just a moment that counted, he turned from me. Meri's lips quivered, her hands holding on tight to the edge of the stand. Do you have any idea what it's like to be in a room full of family, but feel absolutely alone? To sit at a table with people all around, yet wonder if anyone even sees you anymore? She spoke through tears now, her voice cracking, but she didn't stop. She would not stop. I used to tell myself for years that it was just a phase, that if I remained strong, if I kept trying, if I kept giving, perhaps he would see me again. Perhaps he would remember the love we shared. But the thing is, he didn't forget me. He chose to erase me. The courtroom was silent, the only noise the soft rustle of tissues being handed along the gallery as strangers mopped their own tears. Meri angled her head forward, her eyes blazing with a combination of grief and resilience. When I learned about the financial deceptions, when I observed how he had moved things behind my back, I understood something that devastated me more than anything else. I wasn't simply unloved. I was unwanted. I wasn't simply overlooked. I was erased. Her voice lifted, not in rage, but in unvarnished truth. Do you have any idea what that does to someone? To have given everything and know that to him, I was nothing? She stopped, her chest laboring as she held herself together. A heavy silence, thudding and claustrophobic, filled the room. Even Kody, who had been poker-faced up until that point, fidgeted in his seat. Meri turned her gaze toward him, her tears shining under the courtroom lights. Kody, I believed in you. I believed in us. I stood by you when it was hard, when the world mocked us, when people didn't understand. I defended you. I defended our family. And in return you broke me. You left me to carry the weight of loneliness while you built your happiness elsewhere. Kody's attorney protested, but the judge swiftly overruled. Let her go on. The judge instructed sternly, and on she went. Meri's voice softened, nearly a whisper now, but each word struck like a sledgehammer. There were nights I wept so violently that I could not breathe. Nights I prayed that God would make me enough. I remained because I hoped. I remained because I believed in the dream we created. And when that dream fell apart, I blamed myself. I figured if I only tried harder, if I only loved harder, he would return to me. But the thing is, nothing I ever did was going to be enough for him, because he didn't want me. Tears flowed freely now, dropping onto her folded hands. She did not wipe them away. She allowed them to fall, allowed the world to see the sorrow she had kept hidden for so long. I'm not here today for vengeance, she declared, her voice a little stronger now. I'm not here to destroy him. I'm here because I want the truth to be heard. I want the years of silence, of erasure, to finally stop. I want to take my voice back. Because for too long, I let him dictate my value, and today I say no more. The jury changed, visibly shaken. Some even blinked back tears. The judge nodded gravely, her pen still, her eyes fixed completely on Meri. Then there came the moment no one anticipated. Meri rummaged in her bag and withdrew a small creased letter. Her lawyer had advised that it wasn't required, but she insisted. She shook hands unsteadily to unfold it and said, This is something I wrote to myself on one of the toughest nights of my life. I wrote it because I didn't believe I would make it through another day of being invisible. And today I want to read it, because I made it." Her voice quivered as she read. "Dear Meri, I know you feel forgotten. I know you feel like you don't matter. But you do. You are strong. Even if no one sees it. You are worthy. Even if he doesn't tell you. You are loved. Even if you feel alone. Don't give up. Don't let his silence define you. One day you will remember who you are. The room was quiet, some spectators openly weeping now. Meri carefully folded the paper, putting it back in her bag, her tears now replaced with quiet strength. I wrote that letter years ago. And today I finally believe it. I am worthy. I am strong. And I am no longer invisible. When she concluded, the courtroom burst into action, not into claps, but into the thick collective feeling of individuals who had seen something real and uncut. The judge's gavel came down to maintain order, but even she could not conceal the emotion on her face. Meri sank back in her chair, drained but lighter. She'd done it. She'd testified to her truth. And no matter what happened next, nothing, no verdict, no argument, no spin, could ever take that moment away from her. Because for the first time in years, Meri Brown was not silent, and the world had heard her. The tension in the courtroom had reached a boiling point. Meri's testimony had already shaken the walls of silence, but no one could have predicted what was about to happen next. Her attorney stood again, walking back and forth slowly, as if balancing something heavy. His tone was even, but his eyes flashed. Your Honor, the plaintiff at this time would like to call yet another witness. One whose testimony will reveal even more about the truth of Mr. Brown's behavior. The judge raised an eyebrow. Proceed. The side door opened and the room gasped as one. A figure emerged into the courtroom, hesitant, nervous, but unmistakably familiar. It was a Brown child. The scrambling of footsteps, the dropping of heads, the shocked whisper in the gallery. It was lost to the pounding in Kody's chest, audible even in the rigid set of his jaw. His eyes went wide, then pinched. He hadn't anticipated this. The grown child, but still burdened by years spent in their father's shadow, made their way slowly to the stand. Their hands trembled as they were sworn in, but their voice when it came was strong. I did not want to be here. They started looking from Meri to Kody. But I could no longer remain quiet, because I saw things that no child should be forced to witness. The courtroom leaned forward, the pressure of expectation pushing in from all sides. They gritted down hard before going on. I witnessed the way Dad treated Meri. I witnessed her cry at night when he did not return home. I witnessed her attempt, time and again, to connect, to be noticed, to be loved. And I witnessed him turn away. I witnessed him giving his attention to everyone else while she was all alone, as though she did not count. As though she was no longer part of the family anyway. Meri's hand flew to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain this time, but from shock. She had never expected anyone in the family to stand up for her, not publicly, not like this. The child's voice broke as they added, she gave everything to him. Everything, and he gave her nothing back. Gasps filled the gallery. Even the judge's pen stilled in her hand. Meri sat immobilized, her heart breaking and mending simultaneously. For years she had borne the burden of feeling invisible. Now in this moment, her suffering was being heard, not just by the court, not just by strangers, but by one of her own. Kody's attorney flailed in protest, but the harm was already accomplished. The testimony wasn't simply testimony. It was human. It was inescapable. Objection, Your Honor, snapped Kody's attorney, his tone rising higher than normal. This is emotional manipulation, not factual testimony. The judge silenced him with a stern glance. Overruled. The witness may continue. This was no longer a trial. This was no longer about law or evidence. This was about the verdict of hearts. What every heart in this broken family held within. And if any of it could weather the storm, the judge leaned in, his gavel still in his hand, but not in motion. This court has heard testimony beyond words, he told them, his voice calm, grave. We have heard hurt. We have heard loss. And we have heard truth. Truth that cannot be silenced by love or ignored by excuses. Robin's shoulders shook as she lowered her head, her tears staining the papers in front of her. Kody sat rigid, his fists clenched, but his eyes flickered nervously, as if even he knew what was about to come. Couldn't be stopped. The judge went on. What I see is not just a broken marriage. What I see is a family shattered by fear, by favoritism, by neglect. And while the law can apportion property, it cannot heal broken promises. It cannot restore trust. That's your job. Your job, each of you. His gavel struck once, gently but sharply. And so I will not render a verdict of law today. I will render a verdict of hearts. One which each of you will have to live with long after you leave this courtroom. The room leaned in. Every camera, every onlooker, every shattered soul anticipating words they understood would cut more deeply than any court ruling ever could. The judge looked at Robin. Mrs. Brown, you entered into this family with hope. Your fear of losing love blinded you, so that you clung so desperately that others were smothered. You have to bear the burden of that decision. Not for all eternity as punishment, but as a lesson. If you really want to belong, you have to understand that love shared is love made stronger, not love lost. Robin's wails became more audible, her body collapsing inward. She weakly nodded, speechless. And then the judge's eyes moved to Kody. Mr. Brown, he said sternly, his voice ringing out with authority. You were responsible for the hearts of these women and the destinies of your children. But rather than responsibility, you desired comfort. Rather than justice, you offered favoritism. And in doing so, you destroyed the foundation of what you had built. This family is not ruined due to Robin, or Christine, or Janelle, or Meri. This family is ruined because you, their leader, abandoned your responsibility. Kody paled. His lips opened but words would not come out. His eyes flashed over to the gallery, where a few of his children gazed back at him with their own tears. He shifted uncomfortably, the judge's words weighing on him like a mountain. Christine's breath caught in her chest. Janelle used a shaking hand to wipe away tears. Even hard-boiled Meri leaned back in her chair, her face softening for a moment, as the truth at last was spoken for everyone to hear. The judge's eyes then softened, as he faced the three women. Christine, Janelle, Meri, all three of you have borne burdens no woman should bear alone. You struggled for love, for children, for survival. And though your paths move apart from here, you need to keep in mind, your strength lies not in the man who failed you, but in the strength you've demonstrated to each other, and to yourselves. Christine closed her eyes, tears falling down her cheeks, as if the words erased years of silence. Janelle took a shuddery breath, her hand clinging to the table, a faint quiver of relief crossing her face. Meri straightened, her jaw set, but her eyes glistened, not with weakness, but with the tenuous light of long-interred dignity. The judge glanced over to the gallery, where the children sat, the real victims of this collapse. And to the children of this family, he told them, his tone softer now, you have to know, your hurt is true, and it is not your fault. Your parents' mistakes do not determine your destiny. You will bear wounds, yes, but you have to bear hope. Hope that love can be recreated in new forms, even when the old ones are lost. A stifled cry escaped the back of the room, one of the younger children hiding their face in an older sibling's shoulder. The court erupted, emotions overflowing like a flood no one could contain. At last the judge raised his gavel. This court is unable to mend what is broken. It is your responsibility, but use this day as a reckoning, a reminder that love without sacrifice is selfishness, and leadership without justice is tyranny. This is not the end of your tale, but it is the end of your excuses. The gavel crashed down with a loud snap. The words remained long after the sound had died. Robin disintegrated completely, her crying engulfing her as she hid her face in her hands. Kody was rigid, his body frozen, his pride broken into shards that no mask could conceal. Christine took Janelle's hand, their fingers locking in a silent act of solidarity. Meri did not move with them, but her eyes softened a fraction, recognizing the bond that the three of them still shared. The children started to awake, some with tears drying on their cheeks, others holding on to each other, bound together in sorrow, but also in solidarity. And as the courtroom drained, camera flashes, journalists yelling questions, the Browns stood to depart, not a family, not a group, but as broken spirits each with their own verdict of the heart. Robin was escorted out first. Her shoulders slumped, her sobs still ringing in the air. She had desired love, but was instead the emblem of loss. Kody went next, his feet moving slowly, his head bowed. For perhaps the first time ever, he bore not power, but shame. Christine, Janelle and Meri departed in a group, not with grins, but with strength that declared, "We made it through." And the children, they hung around the longest, clinging to each other, whispering solace, attempting to string together a future from the ashes of a past that had at last been adjudicated. The cameras would tell their tales, the news headlines would shriek betrayal, failure and heartbreak. But to those who experienced it, the actual verdict had long since been passed. It wasn't about the law. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about love, what it ought to have been, and what it had become. And as the courtroom doors shut, the world knew the verdict of hearts was absolute.